There's an echo.
Hey there, welcome to ATL and 29, a podcast that looks at the NBA from the starting point of Atlanta. My name is Kevin Chenard. I'm here with Glen Willis and Tyler Jones. We're recording after a pair of wins over the Suns and Bulls, and it's been a while since we recorded. And I know when I initially wanted to set up this meeting, I was like, well, it's a small thing, but I have something to complain about. And what I was mad about was that both teams had some dead time earlier this week. Jalen Johnson was out. And I was upset. Again, minutia maybe, but I was like, why aren't these power forwards, Mo Gay and Daquan Ply, why aren't they practicing with the Hawks? Because they might be able to do something. Well, they did something, or at least Daquan did. He looked pretty good against the Bulls.
Yeah, no, it's unfortunate timing. Because yeah, because it didn't make sense that they didn't call any of the G League guys up the day before to just practice. It was like you had the
Everybody was in Atlanta at the time.
you had the snow game. The College Park team was in Atlanta. They just played the other day. They had a day off too. You could have just scheduled, call them up just to have the practice, and they didn't. Um, and then the word came out. Uh, Hunter then got hurt that game, the Suns game as well. And they didn't call anybody up. Before the game, it was like, okay, what are we doing? We're we have three extra reserves. We're not going to call anybody up. Uh, and so, but I guess the Trey Young injury. Then they were like, all right, we got to call guys up. So that's kind of the storyline of that. And so what we learned, I think I forget who reported this, that the G League guys didn't know they were coming up until that morning.
Yeah.
Uh,
I think that
so
somebody said it in the pregame show or something.
yeah, it was
Maybe
like
Tabitha?
yeah, I think so. Where they were just like, yeah, they didn't know they were gonna play today until this morning. So like no practice, but something Bob was really something Glenn has talked about, but Bob Rathburn on the call, he brought up like repeatedly, is like a benefit of having College Park not only being there in Atlanta, but also them running the same system that Quinn Snyder does, is that it's a glove in hand. Like they know what to do, they know where they're supposed to be, they know what the defensive rotations are, and that's really what stood out defensively. Out Keaton Wallace being put in a like Keaton Wallace played for the Hawks. He's a rotation player, but like Plowden just knowing where to be defensively, every possession and like being locked into what the Hawks were trying to do defensively against a tricky opponent in the Bulls, like that was pretty impressive. And like, it ended up not mattering that they didn't practice, but like uh I also think Kevin, they kind of dodged the bullet. They should have been practicing with the Hawks, but they get the Hawks get rewarded with bad process with two wins against teams they weren't favored to beat that night.
Yeah, and I always hesitate to say that Brad is right, but he was trying to hammer post game that the Bulls win was really a win about the defense. Like you watch that game and it's like, wow, Keaton shooting and Daquan shooting, and they had incredible shooting nights. And while the rest of the team had an awful shooting night, so it all kind of balanced out. But really, that was a game about defense. Like that was a season low 94 points that they allowed, and to me, that's the biggest contribution. Keaton and
I'll,
Daquan
I'll
were just really solid on defense, and really the whole team was.
I'll disagree with Brad on this point. Like the Hawks got any shot they wanted, and they didn't even have elite ball creation. Like they were just brutally attacking Josh Giddey, Kobe White sometimes. Like really, if a bad defender was on the floor, the Hawks were going to attack them off the dribble, force them into the action. Like offensively, they were good all night. It's just that they should have won that game by 30 plus, but like Bogey and Garrison Matthews could not make a shot at all. Like that was really the only thing that was keeping the game close, was like was those two, the Hawks' best shooters, just not making shots. Wide open looks. Uh, because other than that, like the Bulls offered no resistance to what any Hawks driver was doing the entire game. So like I don't know, the Bulls got their own problems, but like I don't want to discredit too much what the Hawks offense did, but yeah, the defense completely shut off anything the Bulls wanted to do. Uh, a huge amount of credit should go to Dyson Daniels for that. Like he kind of he made Zach Levine uncomfortable all night. That and the Hawks credit to Capella and Conway, like they were not just going to they did a very good job team wise, not just those two individuals, but like as a team, taking away Vooch. Vooch is not pop shots, spot up jumpers. Like they were going to force him to put the ball on the floor, and like he was going to have to make a hook shot through a contest. He wasn't just going to get an uncontested like floater, which is what he does a lot of his damage on. So good on like team kind of mucking up stuff defensively the entire game.
What do you think, Glenn? Do you think Brad was wrong too? Because I'll give everybody the opportunity to say Brad was wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I think what was clear was that Tyler said the guys knew exactly what was expected of them on defense. They knew exactly what the scheme was. It's funny, and I did a video breakdown posted to Patreon, and was just sharing some defensive plays where you could just see the Hawks young guys, they were connected and they were working together, right? And then I showed examples of the Bulls. The Bulls were their defenders weren't connected at all, and they weren't communicating at all, and so that did, you know, make it easier. And it's weird because the Bulls have some good point of attack defenders, but as a team, they're just seem to be in a super weird place right now. Like they seem like they're not having any fun. They're not really working together. It's hard to know kind of where they might be mentally. But like, one example was the last play before Donovan called timeout and emptied the bench. Heaton set that screen at the free throw line, and I think it was Williams and Levine. I think it was like zero communication, like none. And so Keaton got a screen on two defenders that weren't moving at all, weren't trying to organize around that screen at all. And Dyson gets that, and that's just an example. And that kind of stuff was happening the whole game, like on defense for the Bulls. So I do think that when you're defending it, to the level that they did in that game, you're missing shots. You can manage through, miss shots more so than that, right? And so I do think the defense is what was stable throughout the game, right? And then thankfully, Plowden made shots and Keaton creation. I thought that was Veet's best game as a point guard. His reads on rejecting screen. I put a couple examples there too, where the defender jumped screen side, so he rejected the screen and created something on. I mean, he's a really good processor, right? And I know he's inexperienced at the position still, but in this game, his reads of what to do based upon how his defender was trying to defend the screen that was there was on point, on time, and he made impactful plays that way. So that was encouraging to see as well.
Yeah, and the biggest thing was that uh Veet wasn't being guarded by a good point of attack defender for most of the night, right? And so like I thought the Hawks, like whoever was the point guard on a possession, basically came down to who was the worst perimeter defender the Bulls had on the floor. Because they were like, we don't want to deal with Io DeSumo's ball pressure because they like only Dyson was barely getting the ball off the floor against DeSumo. Like it was a problem. And the Hawks were like, okay, Pete, you're the point guard now. You take the ball off the floor, get us into our actions, and we, go from there. So like I thought the Hawks, the multiple ball handlers that the Hawks consistently had on the floor really helped them against a very limited personnel wise defensively without Lonzo Ball Bulls team. And like that got the Hawks into easy offense, easy shots. And even though they weren't making and converting at the rate that they probably should have, like just consistently getting into a good positive rhythm kind of was wearing the Bulls out. And the dam finally broke because eventually the Hawks weren't going to keep missing, wide open shots like they were the entire game.
Yeah, and another play comes to mind where Keaton and Yeka were running a pick and roll, and they got the switch. And Keaton, instead of driving, backed out, let Onyeka take Levine down to the front of the rim, and so I mean, so I thought I was just so impressed with Keaton and Heat, the way they were navigating, reading the play, reading what the defense was doing, making this, and it was they were, it was just very very impressive. Now you can play a top five defense, and you know they cover that stuff up better than the Bulls are, but still encouraging to see, I think.
Speaking of that, I tried to ask Quinn today about Dyson playing more essentially a point recently because, Kobe's gone and Jalen, when Jalen hasn't been hurt, he's been with Trey a lot. And he just kind of deferred to, well, we have a lot of guys, so I didn't really get that far with that, but um
Shocking.
it was probably bad time. I mean, he probably didn't want to go anywhere, anytime, whatever, but it was probably a bad time to ask that question after the Hawks essentially ran their offense through Onyeka
Yeah.
at a lot of points. Was that something? Was that a reaction to how the Bulls were defending? Do you think that was just something they had planned? Like, 'cause Quinn mentioned it in his pregame with Bob Rathbun. He's talking about that it was important that Onyeka could make plays with the ball. Um, what did you see from him in that regard?
I mean, they let him operate in the middle of the floor at the nail or a little above the nail, and if the defense covered, a guy trying to get to a DH on one side, he just flipped it, went the other way, got a DH on the other side, or a cut or whatever. And so I don't remember a game where he got so many opportunities just to be the creator in the middle of the floor. That was very different, and it'll be interesting to see if we continue to see some of that mixed in going forward. But they let him, but it was like a borderline point center situation where he was just kind of running things in the middle of the floor. Like I mean, Jokic does it 10 times better than anybody, right? But the Heat let Bam do that. Bam's probably an average passer, for a center. And Onyeka was delivering the ball well. I think and Onyeka's ball handling and passing are something that I hope they can lean into to more in that type of action.
Especially, it's also like another way to attack slow-footed centers where a Kongu making these reads and these decisions quickly, forcing the center, forcing like the slower, bigger size centers to make a decision earlier than they want to, and then a Kongu like making the counterplay to that, getting the Hawk, getting getting the ball handler into a positive driving lane against a slower defender, with a lane to the rim. Like that's good offense, and that's something I hope to see the Hawks continue. You know, and aside, like Congo since coming back from the knee, soren or whatever, it was like man, it was a weird injury. Uh, like ever since he came back, he's been great. Like he's been playing the best basketball on the season since he's come back. We haven't talked about the Suns game where he was you know, just physically dominating a smaller, not athletic Suns team, and was probably the biggest reason why they won that game. Overall, next to Trey Young, and then he comes out to the Bulls game, a different environment, different setting, and they asked him to be Sabonis basically on offense, and he did it. And so, like, this is good to see. It's good to see a Congo build. Hopefully, he can continue to build on this because, uh, this is an optionality they haven't had from the center position. Like, full stop. They purely had their centers be play finishers, and to see Congo just be another guy who could play make is something that will only help the Hawks. Like the Hawks, Congo's flashed it, but the last game was like the first time we've seen him do that for basically the entire game. So hopefully he can build on that and continue to grow from that because like I mean that'd be huge. And just an aside, like I mean, what's helping him as a defensive rebounder is he's just been on it as a on his defensive rotations. Like I feel like he's communicating a lot more recently. Like he's taking a lot more charge of the defense when he's out there in ways I'm not used to seeing from him, and like he's kind of diagnosing plays before they happen, which is helping him get into better rebounding position when the ball goes up, and it's just making it easier for him. As a smaller defender to get these rebounds. granted, it was against, like I said, it was against two less athletic teams, but you know, it's good to see a Okongwu like on the defensive rebounding portion side of the ball, like really show some growth because that's been a real weakness of his game, his first couple years in the NBA.
I to me also like I think it helps like the personnel. Like if you want to play that kind of game with Onyeka passing out of the post, like I think Dyson and Veet fit that better than a lot of the players that he might have had earlier in his career. So it seems like a good fit. But yeah, you mentioned the Suns game. So like, what were the big takeaways for you from that game?
Can I start, Glenn? Because I gotta rant about these NBA
Oh,
refs, man.
okay, a rant. Let's go.
I'm sorry. Like the the refs just allowing Kevin Durant to flop his way in that first. I was really annoyed because like look, KD's an all timer. I love his game, but it became quite clear that with Ricochet he was going to have a hard time getting to his spots, and so he was just trying to manipulate the officials into giving him like ticky tack fouls in that first quarter. They didn't fall for it. Then they opened up the second half and they just gave him like the weakest of calls, and I'm like, what? Like I'm like Ricochet's in good position, like it's hand to hand contact. Like what are we doing here? And but like the Suns trying to play the ticky tack foul game. I'm like, all right, you do that when Trae Young's on the other side. Like he's gonna see that. He's gonna tell the refs like, okay, if you call that for Kevin Durant and Devin Booker, you're gonna have to call it for me every time down the floor. And like that was a big thing was Trae Young constantly getting to the free throw line, just baiting into cheap fouls, which helped juice their offense when either Trey got tired or like they needed something. So like it ended up helping the Hawks, but like I was really annoyed with how KD was just selling like he was just like Ricochet's like the stronger player. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, come on, like play basketball. Like if you're gonna try to bully him physically, try to bully him. Don't do this like flopping nonsense. Like that felt like from a guy who prides himself on his like you know on his basketball acumen. Like that seemed kind of soft for me from him. But I mean, he's a great player, and like that's what great players do, especially when they get older. Uh, and like it was unfortunate because I know Ricochet like talked about uh in his draft process that KD was like if he wasn't one of his favorite players was like his favorite player. So I'm pretty sure he was looking forward to that matchup. But like the refs in that second half, like they didn't really give him a chance. And then we later find out he's probably been playing with this injury for a couple of weeks now, which would explain a couple of certain things. But overall, I was just really annoyed with how the refs just
Glenn, you have any big
allowed
takeaways from the Phoenix
out
game?
the Suns to pick the terms there.
It just showed, they needed Trey to be a scorer, and he like morphed into being a scorer. And so he can do that. You know, a lot of other guys weren't shooting the ball well and things like that. And so in the second half, he just kind of put the offense on his back and created, and the Suns couldn't really do anything. I know you look at the box score and the 2-point field goals are, weren't the most efficient, but he knocked down what half of his threes, I think, and got to the line when he needed to, and just kind of controlled the game. And so, you know, in past seasons, Trey would often, you know, you look at a game like that, nothing for him to get 35. That hasn't been his game this season. His game this season has really been the assists um and kind of partaking within the system and the scheme and those things. But in this game, they needed him just to be a scorer, and he was, and that was a big part of why they won the game too.
What are you looking forward to in this game with Boston, assuming Trey plays?
I mean, it's this is one where they it feels like the last 3 years they've either got completely blown out or they've gotten a narrow one. I mean, obviously we all remember the win earlier this season. Trey didn't play that game, and Dyson was awesome. in that game. Celtics will be on the second night of a back-to-back. They played, I think, Orlando tonight. So it's a little bit of a kind of a tough schedule spot for the Celtics, but you know, you've got to try to defend the three-point line against them. We know that, right? And when you chase them off the three-point line, your rotations have to be on time. And so there's just there's no not much margin for error on defense when you play a team that can deploy that much shooting and has such a fine-tuned system. No matter which five players are on the floor, they're moving the ball, um, putting stress on the defense, and creating open shots. And so I think it's just one of those things where not much margin for error on defense in that game. If you get stops though, you got a chance to, you know, maybe go get the win.
What do you think about Boston, Glenn? I mean, Tyler.
Well, Boston hasn't been playing that well recently. They've been in sort of a slump. Seems like their shooting's kind of fallen back to more of reality. Uh, Even though they have a lot of elite shooters like uh, up and down the roster, it just seems like they're finally going through a shooting slump for the first time in like over a year, basically. So, I mean, the thing is, when the Hawks play the Celtics, when they're competitive, is when they're getting stops on defense, and they're not just allowing these 15-0 runs from five straight three pointers in transition and stuff like that. So it's going to be important that one, the Hawks execute, even though I just said they have to execute on the offensive side of the floor. Can't turn the ball over, can't have bad offensive possessions, bad offensive process where they're not getting quality looks down the floor, because that will fuel the Celtics transition game where they'll fly to the 3 point line and they'll just kill you in transition threes. So that can't happen. They can keep them in it if they can keep them in front of them on defense, force them to shoot over the top. You know they've beaten the Celtics a lot. You know with that formula where it's like, okay, we know this team's great shooting, but if we can limit their drives, because again the ball, even with them winning the title and how good they've been uh the last couple of years, like they don't have truly elite ball handling. So as long as you physically own your matchup, and I think it's going to be very important that Trey uh hold up defensively in ISO situations, because the Hawks aren't going to be able to send that much help for him due to his shooting on the team. He's just going to, like, I think the Hawks will live with uh Derek White or Drew Holiday post ups, even though like that would be a good offensive possession for the Celtics. They'll live with that over an open three. But what's going to kill them is if Trey's not locked in as a defender, 30 feet away from the rim. If he's giving up blow bys, it's going to be a problem. And if he's not locked in off the ball, it's going to be a problem, because the Celtics will, like, they will back cut you to death. They will find every seam, every crease. Like they're a well-oiled machine. We know how this song dance goes with them, but it's going to be important for. I'm really honing, not to pick on Trey, but just like because the Celtics are going to try to attack Trey. Like that's just what they're going to do. He's going to be the weakest defender on the floor. The Hawks probably aren't going to play that many bad defenders outside of Trey, Bogan, and Garrison Matthews. So it's going to be on those three guys to really hold up on the defensive side of the floor.
What do you think the defense is going to look like? I mean, it's good news that Jalen Johnson is listed as questionable, but he might not play. Zachary's not going to play. How do you want to match up with what Boston has defensively if you don't have Jalen Johnson?
And it's tough.
I,
It's tough. I mean, it's
it,
trying to match up with Boston without having all the size that you'd like to have. It's tough. So it's going to take a team effort, to kind of make that happen. It's kind of funny how they don't. Boston doesn't really have like a traditional point guard, you know. But I looked up. They average the fewest number of turnovers per game. And they have the lowest turnover percentage of any team in the league, and that's just about their system. How well they move the ball, how intentional they are, and everything that they do on offense is just precise. So I mean, no Jalen is tough, but I mean, what can you do? Um, yeah, I mean, Hunter would help, you know, and we'll just have to kind of see who they have. I mean, this is the NBA.
Yeah.
Uh, Teams miss guys, here and there, and this is one where it'd be nice to have as many as you can have, but you know, also have to kind of keep the big picture in mind too, and not take any unnecessary risk with someone getting pushed back.
It has helped that the Hawks have looked a lot better these last two games without Jalen Johnson in the previous like 5 or 6 without him before this 2 game winning streak. You know, uh, I think the time off has helped the Hawks kind of solidify some things defensively without Jalen. Um, Oddly enough, I think David Roddy has helped defensively. Uh, it as long as he's Dave has done a good job of being in the right place at the right time, using his size where he can, and understanding his physical limitations. I think he's done a better job these last 2 games overall, just managing uh and really just buying the Hawks time when he's on the floor so that you're not playing beat like 50 minutes 48 the entire game or so. But like I think Roddy's been a little bit better defensively, uh where on in positioning, if that makes sense, because
No, that
that's
does
kind
make
of
sense.
helped the Hawks, even though he's still struggling in certain other areas defensively. Like he's just getting blown by in any fast break opportunity. He's just getting beat right down the floor. Like it's really unfortunate. But him and Bogey, we're gonna talk about Bogey in a second. But like, I
Wait,
but
let me
Roddy,
check my schedule.
but Roddy has been, even though I've been killing him on on Blue Sky, he has been defending a lot better these last couple of games. And I have liked his process in the offensive end where he's more looking to pass, looking to move the ball, be physical where he can, and kind of just help in the margins, because that's pretty much what he can do as an NBA player.
Yeah, he's good with the ball in his hands. These games where Trey's not playing, they kind of play to his strengths because then you need that extra ball handling and extra decision making on offense that he's pretty good at. Do you think they go back to we've got I got Bogey here with an asterisk, but before we get to that, do you think Daquan plays?
Only if Jalen doesn't play.
Okay. Okay. Right. Yeah. Sorry, I was kind of assuming that, but maybe not. Maybe Jalen plays. That'd be something. All right. Bogey, go.
So that Suns game was, I don't know what's going on with him. He was better. He was oddly better against the Bulls. He just wasn't making shots.
Right.
But
That's
like
right.
the Suns game, it was legitimate. He'd miss a shot, not get back on defense, and give up 3 points. I'm like, bro, what is going on? And like he's going through it. Like I think it's a combination of factors why he's not playing as well this season. The biggest one just being he came in hurt, and he's been trying to work himself back, but like he has just not been explosive on either side of the floor. Um, and like the Bulls game just felt like a confidence issue, weirdly enough, because he was, he airballed a three so badly against the Bulls that it led to an open 3 pointer for Chicago on the other end. I'm like, oh, this man's struggling. And he was wide open on the three. Like it was not a contested 3 pointer. It was just he just completely missed the rim. And so I think he's going through a a confidence issue on the offensive side of the floor, but it's bleeding into his defense, where he's not where he needs to be defensively. He's constantly just like not communicating with his teammates or not listening to what his teammates are trying to tell him defensively, and is always like just in the wrong place at the wrong time for the Hawks on the defensive side of the floor, and they can't afford for him. The Hawks can't afford for Bogey to continue to not be good. Like this season is predicated. Like the whole point of trading DeJounte Murray was to open up more scoring opportunities for him in particular. Like, and he has not given the Hawks much of anything. Like it's been stretches where I mean, Daquan Plowden and Garrison Matthews, like Plowden closed over him against the Bulls, and then Garrison Matthews closed over him against the Suns, like and like deserved to, because he's just been flat out better. And
Bogey had that floater at the end of the Suns game. That was the end of his night.
I mean, it was one of those things where he was like slow to him and Kevin Durant were both like jogging to the ball for some reason. And then Bogey gets in and he just he like throws up a not I had the game on mute. He threw up some non-competitive garbage at the rim. I thought they called a foul or something, like in transition because it looked like both of them, Kevin Durant and both like by the way, the Suns, I can't stress enough. They did not want to be in Atlanta at all that game. KD didn't want to be there. Devin Booker didn't want to be there. Bradley Beal definitely didn't want to be anywhere the rest of his teammates. And that was pretty obvious watching those guys play. But like, I'm like, Bogey, bro, what was that? Like Quentin, I think he immediately called timeout and just pulled him for the rest of the game, and deservedly so. So like, I mean, if the Hawks want to beat the Celtics uh, on Saturday, they're going to need the best of Bogey. Like they're going to need Bogey to really show up and like be present mentally, not just be good, but like he's got to be there mentally. And I like people are speculating some things. I think he wants to be in Atlanta. Like he wants to be playing well. I just think he's struggling with a lot of like physical things and it's leading to like mental mistakes that shouldn't be happening.
He's
He's
definitely
got
not moving well.
Yeah,
You can see that all consistently. And on one hand, you want to admire him trying to get back on the floor and help his team. On the other hand, you're like, dude, you're not helping the team right now. But I mean, athletes are like that. They're competitive. They want to get back in there and try to kind of find a rhythm and kind of find a way to contribute. And that's not an abnormal mindset, and for guys at that level. So hopefully in the coming weeks he can find a way to start making some shots because they need them. They need that shooting proficiency that he's always been able to kind of give them that he hasn't, since he came back from the injury, hasn't been there at all.
he's got to he's got to mentally process, hey, it's time to get back in transition defense a little bit quicker.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's the big one. Like it's the transition defense that's getting the Hawks killed, and really like it's got to be irritating his teammates. Like because it's just one of those things where the Hawks have been pretty good this season. Like getting back, like that has been a focal point for them. Like to get back on defense, to compete on the defensive side of the floor, and for Bogey to constantly give up uncompetitive like layups or open 3 pointers because he's not getting back on the defensive end. I understand he might be still going through some stuff physically, but like you can still get back on defense and like compete. And he really didn't do that against the Suns. I thought he had a couple bad instances against the Bulls too, but like overall, I just thought like that was more of a man, my shot is not going in. I feel like I'm not making any good decisions. It's just been a weird year, and you can tell because like this game was you can make an argument this game was set up for like against the Bulls was set up for him to be the focal point on offense, and that wasn't even scheme. Like that wasn't even. It was as if Trey Young was still playing the way Bogey's usage was. So like clearly physically there's something wrong with him, and like they're trying to manage it, but like it's just been a tough watch as a fan of his. Like I love Bogey's game. Like this has just been a throw it in the trash type of season for to start.
As soon as Onyeka Okongwu got his 2020 game against Phoenix, they went and got Nick Richards for Josh Okogie. Any thoughts of that? I think is Josh Okogie one of your favorites, Glenn?
I love his defense. Yeah. Yeah, people will sometimes DM me like, "What about this?" It's like, would he work in Quinn's offense? There's a challenge there, because when you play out the ball, you gotta be able to play the catch. There's some things, and maybe he could adapt some, but when you're missing Jalen, that kind of size he has as a defender and the strength he has as a defender, even if he's like, say, your 11th guy or whatever, having that option instead of David Roddy, sure is get 15 minutes from Josh Kogi, sure is nice, on a night when Hunter or Jalen are missing, and more minutes to that probably if they both are. So I wouldn't be mad at them making kind of a run at that, but we'll see.
Is Nick Richards going to help at all in Phoenix?
I have no idea.
Yeah. Um,
I mean, they're a team with guys that all see themselves playing at a super elite level. Bill's not at that level anymore. You know, Katie's still ridiculous. Booker is too. And so it's a weird roster where you have these high end guys and then the supportive guys, and it's like, how are you going to take a young guy like him and have him acclimate to that? It's hard. I think it's hard on young guys.
yeah, the Suns, they just feel like since they let Chris Paul go, they haven't gotten back to those heights, and I think they really underestimated how much of an impact Chris Paul had on both sides of the floor for them as a leader. Uh, so like, as well as his play, like, because he's still playing at a good level. But you know, that's what they wanted. They wanted Beal, I guess. I don't exactly know why.
Well, let's hope for a good game against the Celtics tomorrow night.
All right. Well, thank you, gentlemen, for joining me, and hopefully we can do this again soon. Good night, Bob.
Bye bye.
Good night, Bob.
Thank you.